Within 90 days, I decided that I wanted brokerage. It was about 35 at the time. And I figured if I'm not going to do it now, I'm not going to do it ever. Knowing that your education actually starts once you get licensed.
Being an assistant, hitching your wagon to somebody who's actually doing deals and helping them out, and you can do that and actually get a salary. There's not really a better way to get into it than that.
Instead of taking that cash, put that percentage into the deal.
There's a lot of brokers out there who are in investment sales and they know nothing about investment sales. You have a broker, make sure they know their stuff. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Commercial Real Estate Blueprint Podcast. I'm excited for today's guest. We have Caleb David here. He's the owner of the David Commercial Group, and he's the principal and also a commercial real estate investor. So I'm really excited about today's conversation. Thanks so much for coming on, Caleb.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So give us a little bit of backstory about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is actually the nonprofit sector. It's I have about 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector, from working for nonprofits to running my own, one that was called the Table Initiative. And then COVID happened, and we used travel as a way to introduce people into social justice issues. And, COVID happened, personal life situations going on. And so we had to close it down. But about 11 years ago, a friend came to me and said, I was pretty burnt out in that nonprofit space where you really just don't make a whole lot of money and you're really just working really, really hard. And so he came to me and he's like, have you ever thought about getting into commercial real estate? And I was like, not really, because none of it made sense to me. You see signs on buildings and you just have no idea. And so I was just like, I don't know. So I took a meeting, ended up becoming someone's assistant. And then, within 90 days, I decided that I wanted to get into brokerage. It was about 35 at the time. And I figured if I'm not going to do it now, I'm not going to do it ever. So decided to take that leap of faith. And, the market was still post 2008 sluggish. It was picking up a little bit, but I'm very grateful to have that experience where the first year and a half of my career in commercial real estate, got to feel the pain, right? So, there is that pain, and we've had that here in the last couple of years as well. But I just thought, let's go for it. And the first year, my peers voted me as the rookie of the year, and then the phone started to ring. Title companies started to call, lenders started to call, and then things started rolling. And, from that point on, I've now done, probably close to 900 deals since that time.
Wow. That's impressive. That's awesome. Yeah. That's such a, funny point too, because it is honestly a good thing you started off kind of a bad market. Like you said, when I started, it was 2019. Yeah. So it was like right before all the craze and everything was going crazy. So I had four or five really good years of just people going crazy. I didn't realize that wasn't the normal. And people would say it. They'd be like, this is not normal. This is kind of just, we're in an upswing. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. But then the last 2 years have been brutal. Transaction volume's down so much. And it's definitely good to get started like that. So walk us through a little bit of that jump, because for the people listening, they want to get into commercial real estate. And one great way to get into commercial real estate ownership is to be a broker.
Yes.
But that's not possible for everybody because, a lot of people have jobs. Maybe they're later in life. They have responsibilities. Maybe they have kids, wife, mortgage, car payment, all that stuff. And you can't just go from making a salary to no money and, have that gap. So walk us through how you navigated that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was very fortunate in the sense that because I was someone's assistant, I had a part-time salary. So it wasn't a full-blown jump. However, the advice I was given by my mentor when I first got into it, he said, you have to work hard for 3 to 5 years before this becomes real, before you really start being like, this is a career. And so I think that was something that was really, really important for me to understand. And thankfully I also worked for a firm at the time that was very boutique, very well respected, did a lot of volume. So there's the opportunity to learn a lot. And I think it's super important to have the right leadership. There are, big corporations, big, huge international and national firms, but you need to find a firm, if you're looking to get into brokerage, that will give you the mentorship and take you and figure out who you are as a person authentically and how do you operate, because I'm not a salesperson. But that's my job. So how do we do that? Right. And so we've got to figure out what are the ways that we can authentically engage, because if you're just doing cold calls or just, hitting the pavement and you're being told this is how you do it. I think it's great to have some guidance, but I think having a mentor that lets you be you is super, super important, because otherwise you're just going through the motions, and eventually people get that. They understand you're just there for a transaction, and people don't typically like to feel like they're just being transacted with. They like to be heard. They like to understand what, you to know what their goals are and how you're going to get them there. So, for me, I think it's just taking that position also of being a constant learner. And, that doesn't have to be something that affects our ego. It can just be as simple as saying something like, you know what, I don't know, but let me find out. And so I think being curious is super, super important. But then understanding that, yeah, you're going to do some really small deals. I once did a single office deal in my first year, worked on it for 6 months. And by the time all the splits were done, I made $21, right?
Oh
So
my
that's not the
gosh.
deal you think of, right? That didn't even cover close to the gas I did for that deal. And, but the thing is, understanding that you have to start small and slowly cut your teeth on the bigger and more complex deals. The thing is, you can get there. It's just a matter of taking the right position of humility and wanting to learn.
Yeah. And I think one of the bigger things to take out of that is that you jumped right into action. When I was trying and I was interviewing for brokerage firms and stuff, I was like not sure how to tell them like what I wanted to do because I didn't even know anything. I didn't know what a cap rate was. I didn't know anything about commercial real estate really. And so you jumped in as an assistant. I think that's really cool. Talk about how you went from an assistant to being more of like a broker on your own.
Yeah. So I knew that there was the potential to have a lot more upside and more income. And, the assistant part of it was good to learn some of the behind the scenes stuff, some of the admin that is very important to know and understand. And so I was given a 90-day trial period. And they said at 90 days, if you want to move forward, then move forward to get your license. And so I just went for it. And I just decided, there's so many different ways to do that, right? Like you can go online, you can do in person. I was homeschooled some as a kid. So I was just like, I'm just going to devour it myself. And, I did the program in 30 days. And then went and took the test, passed both the state and federal. But I think what people need to really understand is what's their learning style. How do they best do this? And at least in the state of Colorado, the licensing is the same for residential as it is for commercial. 98% of what you're going to learn is going to be residential. There's some good information in there, but I think there's the importance of knowing that your education actually starts once you get licensed.
Yeah, 100%. I tell people that last thing too. Like when I took the course in North Carolina, it was, if I remember right, it was 18 chapters. And 17 chapters was residential. Yeah. And the 18th was split between commercial real estate and property management.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's crazy. The point you just made is so important and valuable to our listeners, because if you can't jump right into commercial real estate and it's just not an opportunity for you, being an assistant or hitching your wagon to somebody who's actually doing deals and helping them out, and you can do that and actually get a salary. That's, there's not really a better way to get into it than that. We have a couple guys at the company we work with who are assistants to some of the principals, and they've been doing it for a couple of years, and they're starting to do brokerage deals now.
Yeah.
So like they were the assistant, but they've learned a ton through them, and now they're starting to do broker deals and getting some, decent commission checks. And that's like just 2 years. So you can really speed up your process by doing that.
Agreed. I agree.
And I think with that too is if you look at it on a bigger picture, what the assistant doing is adding value to the mentor, and in turn, you're going to get a lot of value from the mentor. So even if you're not going to go be the assistant, go to that mentor and ask them how you can add value to them, and then follow up with them. And then that's where the relationship's really going to build. So I guess, and I don't want to move too fast here, but like moving into the next realm of like, so you were, an assistant, then a broker, and then you went and started your own firm.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and in between, before I started my own firm, also got into being an investor myself. And
yeah, that's it.
If you are a broker, you see the deals, and so, it's not, it doesn't just have to be you. Right. And, so find other brokers that you know and trust, or the people that you know and trust that can invest with you. And you bring that value of your expertise to think about, what are we going to do? So, one of the things I did was I knew that I didn't want to just do transactions. I wanted to think like an owner. I wanted to think like an asset manager, because when I go to clients to do the leasing for them, I can say to them, I've been a landlord myself. I'm not going to bring you a deal that I wouldn't ink myself. And so, I think kind of moving through that process, to me, it just felt very natural. And, some firms don't allow brokers or limit brokers on what kind of investment deals they can and cannot do, in a yearly period of time. So that's something for people to think about and look at the fine print. So, really, I started off with a small single tenant building that was quasi retail, flex industrial, and thankfully we had the opportunity to kind of start marketing the property just to other brokers brokers and within the community, not officially, but kind of like, pocket listing sort of situation. And literally 3 hours after closing, we had a signed lease with an HVAC company that stayed with a property until recently. But, I think it's understanding when to get in and where's the market going, right? And so the building that we identified was one that was not in the greatest area, but there was development happening coming from the south up and coming from the north down. And so if you can kind of track and see what's trending and where's other development happening, you see like a Starbucks go in, you see another national chain, they've done the research, that they've looked at the demographics, the traffic counts, the access, and those are all clues to know what you should and shouldn't do. And so, and finding and building relationships, again, if you're a broker wanting to get an investment, you've got relationships with lenders, right? So, or you should, relationships with contractors, with the city zoning and planning, to use those as resources to kind of understand, is this a good deal? Is it not? And in running comps, running lease asking rates in the area, and how do you position that property to get a qualified tenant in there to start making some money.
Yeah. Now you touched on so many things there again that I want to go over. One, the fact that, and this is not to hate on any brokers in particular, won't name any names or anything like that by any means, but there's a lot of brokers out there who are in investment sales and they know nothing about investment sales. Sure, they know cap rate, sure they know numbers and stuff like that, but when it comes to actually own a building, you talk to them about it, like, what are you talking about? It's like, how can you advise somebody on a potentially multi-million dollar or under million, whatever, a very, very large investment? You're going to advise them, pretend like you're acting in their best interest, but you really don't know anything about it. That drives me nuts. So that was a big motivator for me to get in the ownership side of the table as well, because I can advise my clients so much better now because I own buildings than before. So I think that's a huge point. So not to talk about me and you, what I'm talking about is for our audience, if you have a broker, make sure they know their stuff.
Absolutely.
Make sure they know their stuff. Second point, if you're listening to this and you're a broker yourself, I kind of had this stupid mindset for a long time of like, oh man, I don't want to get deals from other brokers. I'm a broker. I can find deals. But in reality, brokers are really like one of the best resources to find deals. So like you can get deals from other brokers, even if you're a broker. Who cares? Absolutely. Like just go to them and ask them for deals, tell them what you're looking for. And then the third thing too is I know a lot of people who, the way you do business is so important because you might do a deal with somebody if you're a broker or if you're an investor or you're just whatever. You might come across a certain broker and you might get frustrated with them and say something kind of mean or get mad or whatever and like burn the bridge. But then next month they list a deal that you want. And it's like, well, crap, I didn't do that. So like, it's so important to maintain, like you said, it's such a relationship business. You have to maintain good relationships with people. And if people like you, they will bring you deals.
Absolutely.
So like, it's just huge.
And I think something that people don't think about as well, that as with you being a broker, you're for the most part expected to get a commission, right? So instead of taking that cash, put that percentage into the deal. Then you've got less cash you've got to put down. And I fully agree. It is a relationship business. And there are brokers that you struggle with and, maybe try to avoid or whatever. But, to be able to have a certain level of professionalism and, for them to have enough respect for you to be able to come to you and know that you're going to be able to work through a deal and that you are the real thing. So I think it's so overwhelming for a lot of people to think about it, but it doesn't have to be. There's so many tools out there for research. But I think going back to your point, Graham, is you've got to select the right broker. And how do you do that? You have conversations. I mean, the first thing I tell my team all the time, if somebody calls, we call them back right away, and we have expectations of our team. And I cannot tell you how much business I have gained because someone said to me, oh my gosh, you called me back. It seems very simple, but it goes a long way. It seems ridiculous, but that's how deals get done, is when you start talking to people. And so, I think it's just really important to find the right broker. Just because they're flashy and they've done a million deals, that doesn't mean that it's the right fit for you. You've got to find somebody that your personality works with, that is willing to take the time to educate you and walk you through, here's the general process. Here's what you can expect. Yes, it's a volatile business, so anything can happen, but setting the right expectations is great. And I think one good way to do that is to look at the Google reviews. Look at and talk to people that who have you used before? What was your experience like? Because, sometimes just going off of a picture or a website is not going to get you where you need to go.
Yeah. Something I wanted your opinion on, since we're talking about brokerage and we're talking about investing, is how you kind of toe the line, if you will, of being a broker and being an investor at the same time.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, because I was going to say something exactly the same. You mentioned, like, you said, I'm not going to send this deal unless I'll ink it myself.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes into, like, the people say, like, well, why don't you ink it yourself? Because I've had people ask me that before.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a matter of ethics to begin with. If there is a property that is a better fit for a client of mine, I personally, my personal belief is that I take it to them first and see if that's something they would like to do. Now, I can also say, hey, do you want me to go in with you on it? Or if they just say, hey, this doesn't work for me right now, then it's something that I can pursue on my own or with other potential partners. So that's kind of the way I personally do it. I think ethics is, mediocre at best in our industry, but I think that's something that sets a broker apart is, like, are they willing to do the right thing?
Yeah. You just gave everybody listening, if they want to be a broker, the blueprint to be the top 1%. Call people back and be honest.
Yeah.
Like, that will set you so far ahead of everybody else. It's insane.
Yep. Yeah. And the thing is, and those are the people who refer other clients. I haven't had to cold call in years because I have a group of people that I've worked with, that I've built relationships with, that refer business all the time. And I get referrals not just from former clients. Like, I think it's important for brokers to get involved within their community and give back. So whether that's serving on boards, doing some free consulting for the Small Business Development Corporation, networking events, different things like that. I get referrals from the city at this point because I've served on so many committees and been consistent to give back in that way, that when they have a need, they come to me.
And also, too, you can actually get referrals from other brokers.
Yeah.
Like, there might be a broker who focuses, this is a real example. There's a broker in our market who focuses on multifamily. All they do is multifamily. And he referred me an office building that this person wanted to sell. It's a $2 million listing. We've got it under contract right now. Awesome. And they referred it to me just because I had a good relationship with them, and they don't do office.
Absolutely. I think it's a great way. And I think even building relationships with residential brokers.
100%.
And I think for the listeners, I think it's important, depending on the market that you work in. If you're in a pretty small market, say, 100, 200,000 people, you've got a lot of brokers that do both, right? But they're two very different processes and experiences. So I think you've got to find a broker that is in that commercial vein, and that is their area of expertise. And so for me, Colorado Springs is a hot housing market, or has been historically. So I build relationships with residential brokers. All they've got to do is they know they can hand it off to me, and they're going to get a referral check at the end of it. And they don't have to do any work. And so I think there's great ways to build, and even building relationships with, people from other markets within your state or out of state, being able to do that. That's why I love podcasting, is because we get to build relationships all over the country and have resources to where if somebody comes to me and they're looking for something in North Carolina, I've got somewhere to send them that I can trust and I know will be taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So talking about your, like Jesse was saying earlier, decision to start your own firm, I think that's very interesting. And it's a whole nother world, because I've heard people say, like, you're no longer a broker, really. I mean, you still do broker stuff, but you're really like a business owner primarily. Yeah. And that's a whole different ball game than just being a broker. So like, what kind of drove you to want to do that? And how has that been so far?
Yeah, I think what drove me is that I just couldn't really find the right fit. The company that I started with, the partners parted ways, and then I did end up leaving with some of the partners and started another firm in 2020. And pretty early on, I realized, it's hard when you've got four heads, right? And it can bring you resources, but it just ended up not being the right fit for me. And it didn't feel, I was going through a lot of personal life transitions, a divorce, other things happening in my life. And I was going through my own personal healing journey, and nothing resounded, nothing felt authentic to me. And so I decided to create the space for it, and it was not easy. So within a 12-month period, I started two companies, but thankfully I had the experience from before to be able to do that. But you've got to have the right team around you. And I think, having a business coach, having the right CPA, having the right professionals around you, finding the right person to do your branding. And so for me, at least in our market, all the signs are red and white, or they're black and yellow, or, just very basic. And I wanted our company to be approachable for clientele. I wanted it to be completely different. So when people look at our signs or go to our website, they feel the thing, they feel the culture, they feel the expertise. And so that's what we did. And so we just did something very much outside the box. Instead of, putting my name on everything, the phone number, we want people to reach out. What is the is the point. You want the phone to ring. So simple things like being inviting. So instead of just having a phone number, it says, say hello, and then has the phone number. So I think for me, it was just like, I just wasn't finding, I had offers from international companies. There were so many different things that were thrown my way. But for me, I've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit. And then as I became more and more who I believe I was created to be, I didn't fit in any of the boxes. So I decided to create the box.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think a lot of people can take notes from that because, sometimes there's just not a good fit out there. And, also a lot of people have that urge and you have it, like, you probably knew pretty early on, like, I think I'm probably going to start my own thing. I'm curious, what colors did you do for the sign? Like, what do they look like?
So what's interesting is both my kids are adopted from Ethiopia. The Ethiopian flag is white, red, green, and yellow. And so I'd been meeting with my graphic artist. We've been going back and forth. So he came to me with those suggestions, and I didn't even put it together until after we had figured it out. I was like, oh my gosh, this resounds with me so much because it reminds me of my kids, And so we went with much more modern design with shapes, colors, and just made it more playful while remaining professional. So it's something that a brand new business owner is not going to feel intimidated to call. And, that's the point. And we work with a lot of startup businesses, and they need a lot of handholding and they need a lot of education. And so, we've done $1 million deals and more, but our bread and butter is really to support the small business community.
That's cool. And you say that, and I actually think I remember your email. I remembered it being blue, red and green, and I thought yellow. I was like, I literally could have like kind of a picture in my head because it was very different. I remember that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What is up, commercial real estate investors? While you're listening to this podcast, serious investors are already booking their flights to Cleveland. They know what's happening August 15th through the 17th at the Key Tower Marriott in downtown Cleveland. Commercial Academy is going to be live. It's going to be back. 3 intensive days with J. Scott Shield, Sean Katona, Jared Elmar, and hundreds of active commercial real estate investors from across the country are writing checks and closing deals at these events. The one in August, if the 15th to the 17th in Cleveland, I'm going to be there. Graham's going to be there. You're going to be witnessing all kinds of alumni breaking down deals, seeing real stuff happening live time. We're going to be in the room with J. Scott Shield as he unveils all his keynote presentations, his classic state of the market intelligence report, the kind of insider perspective that positions you months ahead of market shifts. Right now, your biggest competitors are texting Blueprint to 888-653-1199, and they're getting their seats, their networking opportunities, and their competitive advantage. The question is whether you're going to be at this event or not. Like I said, me and Graham are going to be there. So don't watch from the sidelines. Text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 to lock in the lowest possible rate. And if you register before Friday, June 20th, we'll have an exclusive Commercial Academy gift waiting for you in Cleveland. Remember, it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. We'll see you in Cleveland. Attention commercial real estate investors. What if I told you that in 72 hours, you could walk away with the complete blueprint that's creating millionaires in commercial real estate across the country? That's exactly what's happening August 15th to the 17th at Commercial Academy Live in Cleveland, Ohio. This isn't your typical real estate seminar. This is an intensive immersion where Commercial Academy's ambassador, faculty, and alumni have done over $1 billion of assets in their active portfolio. They're going to reveal the proven playbook for identifying distressed assets, structuring win-win deals, and turning problem properties into profit centers. But here's what's going to make this event truly different. You're not just learning from a few people. You're going to be meeting Commercial Academy founder and CEO, J. Scott Shield. And when he takes the stage for his exclusive State of the Market briefing, you'll get the market intelligence that positions you to capitalize on opportunities before they come obvious to everyone else. The reality is simple. Commercial real estate investors across the country are registering, and they understand while others are still thinking about it, they're going to be actually taking action. We talk about that all the time on the podcast. So don't get left behind. Text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 today and secure your seat. Register before Friday, June 20th, and you'll receive an exclusive Commercial Academy gift when you arrive in Cleveland, but only if you act now. The deal that changes your financial future might be one conversation away. Make sure you're in the room where it happens. Again, text Blueprint to 888-653-1199 because it only takes one deal, one time to change your life forever. We'll see you in Cleveland. So you kind of started talking about it a little bit, but we always are curious what people's teams look like, how they built them, what was the priority. So talk a little bit more about what your team looks like. How much is it in-house? How much is it farmed out?
Yeah, so we're all in-house. We don't have a huge team. I would say our priority is, are you a culture fit? And I had to let somebody go about this time last year, from someone who talked a good game, said they were going to do all these things, but then there was no follow through. There was no integrity. They were being secretive. They actually even sign crossed one of my own clients. And I was like, whoa, what are you doing? So I think, culture fit is the biggest thing for me. Real estate can be taught. Character, you learn that through going through your own sufferings. And apparently this person did not go through enough, or was not humble enough to be able to say, okay, this is, I need to be open. And so, right now I have 2 part-time brokers, which generally speaking, I would say is probably not ideal, especially in commercial real estate, because if you're really going to build the business, you've got to spend the time and effort. But one of the brokers came to me who actually used to work for the city of Colorado Springs in the zoning and planning department. She had worked for a developer. So she knew all these things, and I knew that she would bring stuff to the table that I didn't even know. So I look for people that I can learn from, right? And I look for people who are young and eager to go for it, and are just like, sponges. And so, I look for people when someone says thank you on an email, that I see them reply back and say, you're welcome. I think it's the little things that make the biggest difference. It's the people who are willing to give a client an update, even if you don't have an update. Keep them in the loop. Keep doing those touches. I think that is so important. Time kills deals, and non-communication kills deals. So
100%.
Those are the types of people that I'm looking for. I'd love to in the future find somebody who's got a book of business that's looking for a place that has the culture that we do, so that I don't have to do all the transactions. We have the ability to kind of work on business development so that I can build up my team, because that will in turn help the company. So that's something I would love to look for in the near future.
Yeah. So you've got 2 part-time brokers. Do you have like a receptionist, admin person, or like marketing team or anything like that?
Yep. I've got a client relationship manager that kind of helps with, and she's part-time as well, just because, honestly, you guys have said it. The last 2 years have been really tough. So we've had to make some hard decisions, and both the brokers are with me started within 2 years ago. So they both work full-time jobs, but then they've got their clientele that they're working with. They work around and they're doing a great job. So I've got someone who does kind of like all of our marketing, our flyers, making sure everything is updated on, all the websites, CoStar, Crexy, Catalyst, and all of that. She also does the billing and things like that. So, but I think there's a way that you can build a team that's lean and mean, and you can still accomplish your goals. And you don't have to nowadays. You don't have to be in your own office building or whatever. I think COVID taught us a lot, for better or for worse. But one of those things is that our business is changing, and so much of it is now done electronically.
100%.
We're on a podcast right now. You're in Colorado. We're in North Carolina. I'm not even in technically the same city as Graham right now. So I'm like, it's crazy what we can do.
Well, and I think what we do, brings value to the people who are listening, to small and medium-sized businesses, to people who are looking to get in brokerage. And I don't know that there's a whole lot of that out there. And I think there's this barrier of entry, right, to get into commercial brokerage, especially. And, I think my intent is to try to make those walls a little bit smaller. And educating people on, here's how I did it, and if that helps you, great. But there is a way forward, and I think it's vital that we share the knowledge that we have. I think we can't have a poverty mindset. We've got to realize that there is enough business out there for all of us. And it is our responsibility to be the best that we can be. I tell my team all the time, all we've got is our time, our reputation, and our experience. And those are the 3 things that we must protect.
Yeah. 100%.
I think the saying goes co-broke or go broke? I think that's what it is. So I've been kind of throwing that around lately, but kind of to bring it back a little bit, I wanted to talk about your first deal, specifically like how you found it, how you took it down. I think that's be good for our audience.
Absolutely. So the first investment deal that I found, and both the owners of the firm that I worked for were investors. One of them is a developer, and a very savvy one. So I was very fortunate. And so I was always keeping my eyes out. And so I found this retail industrial flex type property, kind of in this in between space. And it was actually listed by a broker that I'd done a lot of deals with. And we had mutual respect. We talked about that. And so went to him and just said, hey, I think we're interested. I've got 2 other partners. We'd like to see if we can get a deal done. And so then picked up the phone, called our lender. And obviously we can't do an SBA loan because we're not going to own or occupy it. But they were able to find us a CHFA loan that was able to get us, I think we were only in like 10, maybe 20% down, on an investment property, which is pretty rare. But I also, for this particular lender, was their point person for all of the properties that they had that had gone into foreclosure. I was the broker that got all of those properties leased and or sold. So when I went to them, they were like, yes, let's do this deal. I mean, obviously they're still going to look at it. They're going to do the underwriting, all of that. But that relationship piece went a long way. And they were able to find us a loan that didn't require 30% down or 35% down. And we knew that we would be able to cash flow this pretty quickly. And so in looking at it, we looked at what's around the area, what are the lease rates, how do we attract the right tenant? And so instead of trying to get the most money, our strategy was, let's be slightly below everybody else. Let's figure out annual increases for the lease. And the tenant ended up staying there. I'm no longer a partner in that anymore, but it was a great investment because I was able to take putting in my commissions and a few $1,000s, and I think we've probably more than quadrupled what I put in.
Wow.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And it just kind of goes back to everything we've been talking about, that it's a relationship business. And it's a relationship business because he had a good relationship with the co-broker, the person who listed it. So that was probably a lot easier for that broker to go to the seller and say, hey, I know this guy. I've done deals with this guy.
Yeah.
So 100%. I can trust him and that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. And then the lender, you have a good relationship with your lender. Your lender, like we've heard this said before where they say, we don't typically do this, but we can do it for you guys because we've done so many deals with you. So like that's a real thing. A relationship is just...
It's a symbiotic relationship, right? We're commercial real estate is its own ecosystem, and we're just part of it, right? And I think we've got to understand and identify what are the other players in the pond, so to speak, from contractors to architects to, zoning and planning to the mayor to whatever that is, what are the ecosystems and where are the places that you need to go? And it's important for brokers to understand that because when they're running into a deal for one of their investors or one of their clients, you need to know where to turn because there's a lot of things that can go wrong in a commercial deal, and so I think to be able to think proactively and then have those relationships, to this week, I had a situation where I've got a client where we haven't even toured a property yet, but I called one of my contractors and I said, hey, listen, here's what we're looking to do. There's no sprinkler system. It's event center. Here's what the capacity is going to be. We need to talk about restrooms, before we even go and look at it, are we wasting our time? And so immediately he got with an architect, copied me on it, and just said, hey, will this space, it's going to be a change of use from what it was previously. It was a law office before. What's going to be required? And if a sprinkler system is going to be required, then I know that's not something I'm going to show my client because they're a startup, they're a very small business, and they can't afford $250,000 or more, depending upon how large the building is, to install, a sprinkler system. So then we pivot from there. And I think, again, talking about guarding our time, you can go chasing things all day long, but it's really about understanding and again, like listening to what your client really needs. And because I don't ever want a client to sign a deal and come back to me later and said, zoning and planning shut me down. Well, they're stuck in a lease. I want to be able to sleep at night. So I think, again, just going back to just understanding your client, understanding the market. And the thing that I love about our business is that every day is different and every day we learn something new that we can put in our toolbox and use that to help others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about brokerage stuff, but really like with the team building, with the prospecting, with everything, it's very similar to an investor. Mm-hmm. Like when you're an investor and you're buying commercial real estate deals, you need good brokers. 2, you need good lenders. 3, you need good relationships with just tenants. You need to make sure when you put a tenant in a space that they're allowed there, like you're saying. When you're building your team for acquisitions, you need somebody who's handling the office stuff. You need somebody who's handling flyers. And so it's all very relative. It's easy to kind of get them mixed up because it's just it's like you said, it's in the same ecosystem for sure.
Yeah. And I think, just the importance of, your own self-awareness and awareness of the market and the people around you, because they're there to help. And I think if you come to them with a servant's heart and you're like, hey, let me help you. I want to bring this tenant improvement project to you. Again, like that's how you build the ecosystem. That's how your reputation is built, I always want, tenants or investors to come back. And so a lot of times that means even if the deal is frustrating, even if they're not a great communicator, that's something that we've got to get our ego in check and figure out, okay, how do I put my ego aside to get done what needs to get done, because this is the best for all parties involved.
Yeah. I'm curious, since we're, targeting people who are listening generally are going to be people who want to get into commercial real estate for the first time, or maybe they're transitioning from residential to commercial investing. So let's do a little role play here. Let's pretend that me and Jesse are brand new real estate investors and we come to you as a broker and we're like, hey, you're our broker. We want to go find a commercial real estate deal, but we know nothing about it. What would you advise them to do? Like what kind of deal would you tell them to go look for? What asset class, all that stuff?
Well, I think, it depends on what's happening in the right now. Right. And historically, what trends have we seen? So but first, the biggest thing is I would try to understand what is their goal? Like what kind of return on investment are they looking for? When do they want to see that? Are they open to stair-stepping that and finding the right property that maybe isn't fully leased and waiting to find the right tenants? So I think it's really more about understanding what their goal is and also how much cash do they have? And connecting them to lenders, trying to get them pre-approved so that they understand what they're going to have to, what kind of money they're going to put in, And so right now, there's not a whole lot of great investment deals to be done in the market because the market was so hot for so long. But, markets like Denver got hit way harder than say the Colorado Springs market. And I work in both, but the Colorado Springs market is a little bit more of that relationship driven. Everybody knows each other, so very often what I try to do is I try to source off market deals. What is it they're looking for? So right now, if we can find a great, industrial property that is cash flowing pretty well, then I think that's kind of a way to go and trying to find out, that's sometimes just us going and looking on the assessor site in certain areas and saying, okay, here's the contact information for the person who owns this. Let's reach out to them to find out if they're willing to sell. And an investor's always going to pay less than an owner user. So, it's a matter of finding out who they are, what their goals are, and then not even starting the search until we know that they're in a position to pull the plug if we find the right property.
Yeah, 100%. One of the guys we look up to a lot in the commercial real estate space, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said something along the lines of like, you're going to get far more lucky in the commercial real estate business than you will anywhere else in the rest of your life. And it's like, if you can just get good at the skill of finding off-market deals, like you just said, and just by taking action, putting that thing under contract, there's so many more people who want deals and can't find them and are willing to pay a premium than there are people who can find deals. Like, for example, last year we found our first ever deal. It was a warehouse in High Point. It was $250,000. We put it under contract for $250,000. We closed it for $250,000, which is pretty cheap, relatively speaking, for industrial. And we were marketing it for a lease, but we had someone approach us who wanted to buy it. They put it under contract for $365,000. Wow. So that spread is what, $115,000. We didn't sell it. They ended up backing out a couple weeks later.
Yep.
But just like you said, an owner user will pay far more than an investor. We ended up leasing that building, but because we found that deal that was off market, we got it at a really good basis. Somebody else who's an owner user, they were looking on the market what everybody else is looking at, and there's only 3 buildings out there. Well, this one popped up, and maybe they have to pay a little more, or maybe they have to pay market price. Yep. You can do very well finding deals that way, and that can be a great way to start. Like you said earlier, stair step. So like if you get that, you could sell it, you can make $100,000. Now you have a little capital. Take it to the next one.
And I think building that relationship with your investor clients, if you can't do that again on your own, to build that. And here's the great thing. When you source, like I helped a client about 2 years ago purchase an off-market property that I used to be the listing broker on for many years, and I knew it was a great property. And so I went to him, and the building was owned by my former boss. And so I was able to negotiate a deal and end up getting that building fully leased. They only had 2 vacancies, but within 6 months, you got the lease deals too. So, thinking about that strategically, if you're helping somebody purchase a property, think about who are the ideal tenants. Who are those people? Because if you're helping the investor buy that property, more than likely, you're going to get the leasing on it too. So there's multiple deals to be had in situations like that.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So talk to us about your podcast and why you started it, what it's about for those that don't know.
Yeah. So just a few months ago, started my own podcast called Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered. And essentially the goal is to be a point for people to get educated, for them to hear from, property insurance specialists to other brokers, other people in the market, business coaches, so the idea is to, again, kind of make commercial real estate approachable and for people to be able to have a place to go to learn where there's no judgment, to ask any questions they want to ask. And so I fell into it. I didn't really want to, it's not something I necessarily was looking for, but with the market being as hard as it was, I'm like, I've got this time on my hands. So why not try something new, and I do this every day for my clients. I'm just doing it on a screen this time, and so we've got about 8 episodes out right now. And so we're really excited about where that's going. And we feel like it's something that no other brokerage in my market is doing. So, it's one more thing to set us apart from other brokerages.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, definitely keep going.
Yeah.
The podcast for us has been tremendous.
It has.
It's like the amount of activity we get from it, and people reaching out, asking us about properties, saying they want to do this, they want to do that. Potential people saying, hey, if you guys find a deal and you don't have money for it, we could partner. We've just had so much positive feedback. We've been extremely blessed that it's so worth it. And I think the stats, after 90% of people quit after episode 10 or something like that. So if you can get to episode 11, you're going to beat more than 90% of people.
Perfect. I will keep going. I've already recorded more than 11. So
There you go.
That's awesome.
But we want to be able to be a resource to people that feel a little bit intimidated. If someone's in the Colorado market looking to just have a conversation, or they're just trying to figure out, when things were hard, we would just talk to small business and say that are in transitions or if they're struggling, if they're leasing or they might want to sell their building, we talk through and give that advice for free, just here's what we think would be the best direction for you to go. And so we want people to reach out, and if there's no deal to be had, that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. I think another takeaway too is through the podcast, people are seeing exactly what you're doing, what your goals are, all that stuff. I think the more that people know, even if you don't do a podcast, if this isn't your thing and you're an investor, just go meet every broker in the market or being a bunch of landlords, go do some board stuff. Just the more people that know what you're doing, the better it's going to be for you and the easier it's going to be, because then stuff's going to start coming to you.
Absolutely.
That's definitely true. But the only difference is doing all that takes a lot of time, which you should be doing anyways. However, if you record a podcast and 50 people listen to it, you just talk to 50 people right there instead of going around to 50 different people. So you can't just do one, you can't just do the podcast. You absolutely have to do what Jesse's saying, or you're going out and meeting people and stuff like that. But doing both is compound effect.
100%.
Absolutely. I think it's being wise with our time, right?
It's the best form of leverage there is.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been a great episode. I think super valuable for people listening, whether they want to get into the brokerage space or they want to just get into commercial real estate as a beginner. You gave a lot of really good actionable tips. So we appreciate it. If people want to check out, you and your podcast and everything, what's the best place for them to do it?
Yeah, the best place to do this, follow me on Instagram, and it's just at Caleb David. Same with LinkedIn, same with Facebook. So feel free to give us a follow and a like. And we try not to overwhelm people with spam or information. So, but as new podcasts come out, new different things happen, we're here. You can go to our website, davidcommercial.com, and reach out to us, set up a time to meet with us, and would be happy to help you with your goals.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. Just one more reminder. We've been doing this for almost a year. We've got over 50 episodes, and I think we have 4 reviews. So if you guys could go leave us a review, give us some feedback. Hopefully it's positive. We really appreciate it. It'll help us grow. We want to help more people, in the commercial real estate world, like Caleb's talking about. We want to do that and help more people get into this space that's kind of, it's got a pretty high barrier entry. So go do that so we can get to more people, and we appreciate everybody listening. Thanks so much.